Welcome back to episode number 18 of the Carp Angler Chronicles podcast. Today, it is just myself and Pete. We don't have a special guest for you, but what we do have is 11 of your questions that we will be covering in this episode. They're quite big, juicy questions on quite a few different topics, to be honest with you. So we'll be diving into some great chats today, and obviously we'll just be sharing our perspective on these different matters. Before we do that, something we are really bad at is introducing tipple of the episode straight away. Usually we introduce it like 10 minutes or 30 minutes in. Pete, what is your tipple today, my man?
It's not a very exciting one, mate. I've gone for a bottle of Coors Light. Main reason being, in the corner shop, it was 2 bottles for £4, and I have lucked out, mate, because I've got a 710ml bottle, which is massive.
It's a big boy, yeah.
Yeah.
I like a Coors Light. They're lower carb than other beers, other lagers. Yeah.
Did not know that. And if I drink both of them, mate, and I've got room for more, my wife Vanessa, she's got some Pepsi in the fridge, mate. So I'll probably move on to a rum and coke. See how the podcast goes.
Yeah, very feminine as always. I've just finished off an Estrella, which I had with my dinner, and then I got a few real ales. I've got a couple from Purity Brewing Company, which is based in Warwickshire, which is not a million miles away from me, to be honest with you. So I've got a Purity Mad Goose, and I've got a Pure Gold, and a Ubu, and I've also got a Timothy Taylor's Landlord. I don't mind a Timothy Taylor's Landlord every now and then. Do you like that, Pete? Do them cheap in a lot of pubs, don't they?
I wouldn't know, mate. I don't go to the pub.
No.
No, mate. Do you know what? I've not been to a pub since before lockdown.
I tell you where I like going when I visit my mum and dad in Cornwall and see my kids and that lot is the Jamaica Inn. You remember going there?
Yeah, I do remember going there, mate. That was ridiculous.
It's a good little pub.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? It's got a bit of history.
Yeah.
It's featured on some of those most haunted programs and things, I think, isn't it? It's got a resident ghost there.
Is it?
Yeah, I thought you'd know. I thought you'd be up to date on that.
I know someone got murdered in there, and there's a plaque on the spot where he got murdered.
God,
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
celebrate that.
Yeah. Anyway, what's fill the listeners in and me. What's new in the world of your angling? We'll cover that, and then we'll get on to all of the different subjects that we're going to cover.
Yeah, so for me, mate, not a lot is new. As I mentioned on a previous pod, I've been sort of focusing on a new water for me. I've done in total 3 nights to no fish, but it's a kind of water where you can do sort of 20 plus nights before you get your first bite. It's not unheard of. So I haven't got a lot to go on, to be honest. I've, as per usual, just got my sort of 12 hours overnight once a week. I've been getting down there a little bit to bait up, but I haven't really got much to go on in way of sort of fish sightings and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, nothing exciting. What about yourself, mate? I know you've been sort of tinkering with a new bait. Is that on the same sort of water you're fishing?
Yeah. Wow. So I designed a bait that I'm very confident in, and it's got some more. It's based on some things that I used to do, and it's got a more of a modern twist on it. Anyway, I think I told you this already, Pete. I did my first roll, and you know what? Half hour into it, I was like, and this sounds ridiculous, but I was like, I can't do this again. I literally can't freaking bring myself to do this again. For those listeners that don't know, me and Pete used to roll our own bait for years and years. In the end, we did it together. We'd have rolling days. We'd roll up, 20, 30K, whatever it was. We'd roll a lot of bait, and I haven't rolled bait for years. Not like that. I've been doing a lot with hook baits and pastes, but I just decided to start rolling en masse again. And And yeah, mate, I got about a half hour in. I was just like, fuck, I've been a silly boy. I can't do it again. Realistically, the time it takes, that's time away from either my business or fishing time or lake walking time. Do you know what I mean? That time's got to come from somewhere, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
It is. And I know it sounds ridiculous because I've been planning this bait for the last couple of months probably, or month or so. And but yeah, I just had the epiphany. I was there. I was there, like mixing it all. I was like, do you know what? No matter how much I'd love to start making this bait and tweaking it, I can't be dealing with this shit. As well as that, I've said this time and time again. If you want confidence, don't be designing new baits. Okay, use an old proven recipe. I could do that. But I wanted to do something new on this water. And realistically, the amount of testing you have to do, which means blanking, by the way, it's very rare you knock it out in the park straight away. Okay, you know what you're doing. You could get a good bait. But to make that really shit hot and perfect it takes a lot of work. And to be honest, I'm not fishing a kind of water that I could do that on. So all in all, long-winded answer to answer your question, mate. I've decided, no, sod it. I'm not rolling bait anymore. I want to get a different type of bait going. The water sees a lot of Baitworks bait, boilies, which I've used before. Very good bait. Nothing but good things to say about them. But I want something different. I always like to be different on a water. I think it's a bit of an edge, or I think it can be a bit of an edge. I know that phrase is overused, but I think it can be an advantage. So anyway, I've decided to go with a different bait, mate. So yeah, I'm doing that. I'm tweaking. I'm always tinkering with hook baits and different things like that, which I'm pretty confident in. But yeah, as far as bait goes, mate, that's where I'm up to. And in terms of my fishing, yeah, I'm on the water that I mentioned to you before. I still have not got to that stage where I'm like fully zoned in or excited about it. I've got to be honest. I'm finding it tricky at the minute. I just don't think I have the right venue in front of me. I don't have access to the right venue to really get me fired up. I haven't been fired up about a venue for a while.
Been
Shame.
a long time, isn't it, really? Even since we've been doing this podcast, you've not found a venue that's you've sort of stuck at, or it's really sort of like felt right for you. Would you agree?
I totally agree, mate. I thought one of the venues was going to be the one, and then I realised actually the info I had was kind of bollocks, and it turned out to not be what I thought it was. So yeah, mate, you're right. Yeah, I just need something that really lights my fire, and unfortunately, yeah, I haven't got that venue. But who knows? I'm going to stick at the venue I'm on for a while. Next year, I don't know. Reading's not a million miles away from me. And there's a couple of waters there that are kind of open access that I wouldn't mind having a bash at. So who knows, mate? I might end up travelling further afield, or, I mean, there's an abundance of lovely, amazing waters in the Cotswolds. It's just getting access to them, which is the issue. But, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, have you got your name down for anything sort of locally to you?
Yeah, several.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, mate. Names everywhere at the minute.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've got access at the moment to some waters with nice fishing. It's just they're not really doing it for me. I'm struggling with the busyness as well. It is busy up here, and that side of angling I don't like. I suppose I've been spoilt in Cornwall, and some of the other waters that I've fished. So yeah, the Cotswold Water Park. There's a lot of anglers there. It is a bit of a hot spot for angling for obvious reasons. And it means busy banks. To be honest, the same would be said in Reading. So, probably that's not the way to go for me.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Tough, eh? Do you know what? The last time I fished, I was actually at the lake completely to myself, which I've got to say is... Actually, no. Probably since lockdown, since we were allowed to go fishing again, it's probably only like the second time I've had a lake to myself. It's certainly busy, isn't it? Everyone's fishing this year. Absolutely everybody.
Yeah, it's been pretty rammed everywhere, isn't it? More so than usual, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, I've just flitted around different places rather than really getting stuck into any one place. But this place I'm on now, I'll fish it until I've had some of the ones that I want, a few of the A-team I want. So I'll probably be there until I get them, mate. Unless something opens up for me that I can't refuse. And then I'll move on to that. So, buddy, should we jump into these questions?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. So, I'll be honest, we had other topics to talk about on this podcast, but I put a post out on Instagram on the stories asking if anyone wanted us to cover anything. And we got 11 pretty decent questions, to be fair, on a range of different topics. So that's what we're going to do on this episode. So in no particular order, just in the order that it shows up on my screen, our first question says, or asks, should I say, how different do you think the current angling playing field would be if social media didn't exist? So basically, how would modern carp angling be if social media didn't exist? I think that's a bloody good question. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, like you say, great question. So initially when I first read it, I was like, do you know what? Like, wow. My initial thought was like, it was like back in the sort of like early 90s, and you know, when carp fishing had its sort of initial big sort of surge, and you had different pockets of different anglers in different parts of the country, and I think wherever you would sort of like would travel, there was different methods of fishing and different secrets, and then you'd have sort of like one sort of group of anglers would be really sort of going down with like one method that would really work, and I think it would be like that. But then I was thinking, well, actually, if it wasn't for social media, you'd probably still have all the mags like Carp Talk, and all the magazines would be thriving still, wouldn't they? So a lot of these little secrets and edges would all get published in the magazines anyway, so it kind of put that theory to bed. I think the lakes would be quieter, mate.
Yeah. I mean, well, when we started, there wasn't, carp angling wasn't, I mean, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't Instagram, there was nothing around like that. You know, the lakes that we found out about was just by word of mouth, and then later on just looking at maps, wasn't it? I mean, that's how it was. There was no like, you know, Google searching the name of a lake and then it's coming up and there's loads of information and there's a bloody Instagram hashtag of it, or there was none of that stuff, was there? And I think that's probably only boomed in the last, I don't know, 8 years maybe? I don't know. 10 years maybe longer, I don't know. But yeah, in my opinion, I think obviously it would be very different. I think in some ways it would be better. It would be harder to find out about venues, of course. Possibly harder barrier of entry if you didn't know people. But yet, if you were in the know, there would probably be less people in the know, so you're more likely to get a chance to fish somewhere, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think it could work for or against you, but yeah, I think in terms of knowing about venues and getting on venues, obviously it would be very, very different. Very different. And in terms of even how we fish, I mean, different rigs and things like that. I mean, take an example, you've heard of a Ronnie rig, right, Pete?
Yes.
How have you heard of that? Probably social media, right?
Yeah, probably.
Do you know, it's true, isn't it?
But that's what I was meaning. I could just imagine different pockets of anglers all around the country. Like I can imagine sort of like the southeast of England, like the Ronnie rig being the going thing, but sort of down here in Cornwall, we've still probably only just discovered the hair rig. Do you know what I mean? So everyone will be sort of like hair rigging old school and
still side hooking potatoes down in Cornwall, mate.
Parboiled potatoes.
Bit of food dye on them is the latest cutting edge for you guys, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, it would be very different. I'd like it in many ways. But I tell you what, I think it's always easy to look back with rose-tinted glasses. It's a bloody luxury. I tell you, for one, what I love, I don't know if you could call it social media, but web-based technology, would you call it? I don't know. Multi-maps was the first, and then you got Google Maps and iPhone Maps. Having a satellite picture of lakes, I mean, that's like my first go-to whenever I find out about a new water or go to target new water. I think that's an edge. And looking at different satellite pictures from, so like the one on the Apple app, I say Apple because I use an Apple phone, is different from the Google one, and it might be a different time of year, and it might show a different like gravel bar or something like that. And obviously you want to go with your marker float and map all that stuff out, but nonetheless it just gives you that extra dimension. Do you do that, mate? Do you look at aerials of lakes?
Yes, yeah, definitely. All the time. I still do it, and I still get on Google Maps and search for lakes. And do you know what? I actually saw like this is still like the inner child in the carp angler in me. I actually saw a comment on a YouTube video, and this YouTube video was posted, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. And it was just a random, like really crappy YouTuber, mate, fishing somewhere in Cornwall, and then somebody commented about a quarry down south. This is really, really far down south as well. I've never been there before, and they mentioned a 40-pounder in there, and I was just like, surely not. And then I read through the comment thread, and I was thinking, these are just like young kids, but someone's caught a 40-pounder out of this quarry. And I've been on and sort of I found the quarry online, and I keep meaning to go down there and scope it out. Because there's meant to be quite a few fish in there. It's just one of those things, and it still gets me, the old Google Maps. And it's funny, I heard you mention multi-maps as well. Like, that's a blast from the past, isn't it? Like, these things just disappear. Do you know what I mean? It's like, where did it go?
It got bought by another company. Yeah. A big pit down south.
Yeah,
when Pete says
not a big pit, just not a quarry.
Oh, quarry. Sorry. When Pete says down south, he means the bottom of Cornwall.
Yeah, I mean we're talking the Lizard.
Yeah, he is in the south. He's in Cornwall. So down south for him is proper deep Cornwall. Is that a place we didn't know about when I was down your way?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, surprises me. It's not. I won't say that actually. All right, fair enough, mate.
Yeah, no, something you definitely wouldn't know about. It's literally like a stone's throw off the sort of like the main road, and yeah, I don't know. I've never been there. I've never checked it out, but I definitely will one day.
There we go.
Cornwall's full of these little secrets, isn't it? There are little places like that, some little gems, and you can catch something that's not been caught for sort of like a long time, or doesn't see any pressure, and you just find out about something, and it almost gets forgotten about, doesn't it? It's like time forgets down here.
It does, and I really miss that about Cornwall, I'll be honest with you. I really do. When I was there, I just wanted to be up here or somewhere else where there's, more carp waters, bigger fish. But now I'm up here, I'm like, just Cornwall. That was the place, mate.
You suffer. You suffer from the old rose-tinted glasses, don't you?
I do, mate. I'm really nostalgic, aren't I, and sentimental, and yeah, I really am.
When we had the meet up at Upper Tamar, you were just like, I just forget how shit the Cornish lakes are. You're just like, this is grim. You wanted to go home.
Yeah, I do remember that actually. It's so true. But that's that lake. I mean, that lake is. I've never really liked it there. Take me back to the old pads. I'd love that, mate. I'd love to fish that place again. I know it's very different now, but that pad lake, I'd love to fish there, dude. Yeah, if it was how it once was, definitely. I was looking at pictures earlier. I sent you a few of those brace pictures that I caught, and yeah, I'd love to go back and catch those fish. I'd love to. I'm sure they're probably not alive now, but
I think a few of them are swimming around in a local reservoir now, mate. I'm not sure whether they're alive or not, but yeah, fantastic. Like, how lucky were we? Like, proper fish, mate. They were proper fish. We were fishing for something pretty special, to be fair, back then. We didn't. Do you know what? I didn't get amongst the mirrors like that, like you did on that place.
Mate, see, I caught so many fish. I was thinking this, and that doesn't mean to sound douchey, but you got to remember, I was fishing it so much, mate. Like I was probably there most days.
I think you were doing like 72-hour sessions, weren't you? Before.
Well, I was. I don't know. I guess I'd do. I didn't have weekends off, but I would do like 2 days on the trot, but which was 3 nights. But then I'd do like a quick overnighter in the week when I was really on it. Yeah, I was just, and then I would like go there, just drive and just bait or look at it. And the thing is, like, you could look back and be like, oh wow. And you've said this to me before, like you were a bit jealous of me because I was like all over it and things like that. But without getting too deep, that was probably like a really low time in my life for other reasons. I was going through a lot of hard shit and I just wasn't really truly a happy person deep down. I just put everything into my fishing, all of my energy into my fishing. And sure, that was great. And I had some amazing memories and I loved it. Of course I did. But really, a lot of other things in my life weren't settled, and fishing and that place and some other lakes I moved on to was my refuge from reality, So whilst I might have caught a load of fish and seemed like I was like not on top of the world, but you know what I mean, like, killing it. Actually, I was in a pretty bad place, really. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of sad in a way when I look back.
Yeah, fair enough. I think.
I'll lower the tone there, like bring the mood down a little bit.
A little bit, like where do we go from here?
Yeah, get the violin out. That's what you do, mate. Yeah. So anyway, we've massively gone off topic there.
What was the question?
Yeah. Carping, like life without social media. Yeah, it would be great in many ways, and in other ways it would be inconvenient. I reckon that's how I'd sum it up. It would be fantastic, but inconvenient. That's the truth, isn't it?
It's like you were saying. It's almost like if you could go back and have no social media, it would be fantastic for a period of time, wouldn't it? And then after a while, you'd be a bit like, oh, like you'd get your cravings, or you'd realise how much you missed it and how much you relied on it for bits of info, etc.
Yeah,
good question, and that's something that sort of would never enter my brain to ask that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, good question. Yeah. Right, which one are we going to next, dude?
Next, do you want me to read them all out?
Yeah, I can do the next one if you want. I'm on it.
Go on,
you
do the next one.
So this is from Jim, and it's winter baits and their application. You can go first.
Good question. Okay, so let's talk about boilies first. I mean, a lot of people stay on the same bait all year. There's definitely merit in doing that. I'm not one of those people. I just don't think that's optimal. I mean, I think if you have a bait that will work in winter and summer, obviously I understand that you're getting those fish on it and it's good for them and they recognize it. Exactly. Yeah, I get that stuff. But it's not really optimized for any one season, is it? It's it's a bit of a compromise for all seasons. Yeah, sure, I understand, you can lower the protein, lower the lipids a little bit. But it's still kind of compromised. At least it is in my eyes. So I definitely switch boilies when it comes to boilies. I mean, look, I'm into bait. I switch boilies probably more than I should do. So yeah, I'll definitely move on to a bait in the winter months that I feel will work much better. Not just from the standpoint of protein and fats, but there's different attractants and palatants and different aspects of the bait that will work. Some will work better in winter or spring or summer. Some of that is to do with the temperature. Some of that is to do with what the carp need. So many different variables to talk about. But me personally, when it comes to boilies, I will switch baits. And I pretty much just exclusively use boilies or hook baits, pop-ups and paste in the colder months. Usually in spring as well. It's only kind of summertime and a bit of autumn that I'll use certain particles, nuts, etc. So yeah, winter time. Was it for winter? Was it specific to winter?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Winter time, I switch my boilie up and I pretty much just use boilies and pastes. I think pastes are, I've said this time and time again, I think they're a really overlooked area, and you can do some very special things by knocking up some pastes. How about you, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this many times before on a podcast. Quite often, um, in the winter time, I just revert back to sort of like single hook baits. It's the old cliche. I quite often go to sort of like a classic, sort of like intense, sort of flavoured winter pop up, my homemade pop ups, which I do okay on. Yeah, and that's it really. But I think I'm probably missing a trick. I think I'm a little bit too conditioned in my own fishing. And it's just I revert to type, I guess, each winter. I should probably try something else and try something different. But what that is, I really don't know, mate. I know I'll revert to type and be quite content and happy in my fishing. I never use paste, mate. Rarely. I know you talk about paste quite a lot. It's something I never use in my fishing. Um, I don't know why, but I think in wintertime, surely that's got to be a little edge. Do you just sort of use like your boily mixtures, or are you often making sort of like specific paste for different conditions? Or
No, yeah, I make different. No, I don't use a boilie base mix. I mean, I don't roll bait at the minute anyway, so I wouldn't be able to do that. But no, you don't. How you'd construct a boilie, some of it is obviously to do with gelling and rolling, etc. Where you don't have that issue with paste baits, you can do different things. You can have a lot more solubles in there if you want it to break down quickly, which generally with paste you would want to. Obviously, you don't use egg. So, yeah, no, I do them very different. And I started with pastes. I think I only started... Wow. I started with pastes. I think the first time was those old Richworth little tubs. Might have been before your time, Pete, of paste. And
I remember them.
You remember them, and you add water, and I think that was the first paste bait I used. And then I think I did a little bit when we're on the Pads Lake, and then I really got into it when we joined that syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember, but I was at the time I was balls deep in Tim Richardson's writings and things like that, and obviously he wrote a lot about that kind of thing. So yeah, ever since then I've been a big fan of pastes. I just really see their advantages. I mean, don't get me wrong, like the lake I'm fishing now, I wouldn't dream of putting out some paste on the hook or on a little spiral as the sole hook bait. I mean, the crayfish would just have that off in seconds, Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're the be all and end all, but I think around a hook bait or in the area, what have you, I think it's a huge edge. Epic thing to do, and no one's doing it. No one is freaking doing it, or very few people.
Yeah, I like it. You're passionate about it, mate. So you've got plans for that this winter then?
Mate, I'm using pastes all the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Mate, you,
Well,
you,
mate,
you keep busy, don't you, with your bait and stuff? You're doing a lot, mate, all the time.
constantly, mate. Yeah, I do. I really do. I do. But what I would say is I don't flit around a lot, right? So everything comes together. I mean, I've got a couple of hook baits that I'm confident in, but there's one theme of it, right? The other ones, they're just slight variations to see if it makes a big difference. But there's like one theme that I'm going for, and you can, and that's what I was going to build the attractor package on for. Well, it was what I built the attractor package on for my latest boilie. But the hook baits, it's the same kind of theme for the paste. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's the same basic attractor and gustatory profile of it is all the same. So yeah, I do lots of different things, but it's all around the current combination of attractors, etc. that I'm settled on. I think that's important. Otherwise, like 1 minute you want to do like a fruity fish meal, the next minute you're on like a spicy bird feed. You're just like you're confusing yourself and everything. I now believe that I have I have something that I can really confidently stick with and just tweak it and then put it into its different formats, be that a paste or a hook bait or a ground bait or what have you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's decent, mate. Very nice.
Yeah. We done on
I
that?
think we.
Anything to add to
I
that?
don't think so. No, no. Like I say, I'm a revert to type kind of guy, but I don't apply myself like I used to with bait anymore. Um, and I think I probably let myself down. But I'll sort of like come into that again because we've got a question about I think low stock lakes. So I'll quiz you about your paste and things with low stock lakes in a bit, and we'll see what you come up with.
Yeah, awesome.
So the next question we've got, do you mind me going into it? It's from Trev.
Oh, mate, go for
Yeah,
it.
so Trevor, best and worst buys.
That's a good question. I have nothing prepared for this. Do you?
No, I should have read these before we started the podcast, Sam.
Best and worst buys. Best buy recently. I'll tell you exactly what it is. After many years of owning the same Petzl head torch, I bought a new one. It's another Petzl. And it's got a red light on it, which I like, and it's brighter than my last one.
Winner.
Yeah,
Rechargeable?
There we go. No, mate, I knew you'd ask.
Enter the rechargeable times, dude. Come on.
I struggled to get one that had decent spec, high amount of lumens, and wasn't rechargeable. I went to lengths.
You don't want it, do you? You do not want it.
No. It's actually a discontinued Petzl. I had to get a discontinued one to get it with decent lumens and not. You get the lower lumen ones. With lumen is the power outing, basically. But yeah, no, I don't want a rechargeable one, mate. It's more to go wrong. It's more faff. You just put batteries in, you know?
Okay.
I'm an adult, Pete. What can I say?
You are an adult, Sam. Yeah. So I've got a worse buy recently, and that is the Witchwood MHR 60-inch oval brolly.
Oh, you're shitting on them.
Shots fired, mate. Well, I actually really like the brolly, like in itself, like the design and the little features, if you can call them that a brolly has nowadays. And if it didn't leak, mate, yeah, I'd be all over it. But I've had two of them, and they both leak in the exact same place, to the point of the supplier that I bought them from said that they were going to do like tests to actually give me a refund to make sure it doesn't leak. And I had to take videos of the bloody brolly leaking.
You said this before.
Yeah. So anyway, so that'd be my worst buy recently. Best buy over time. Well, I can do a best buy, which I've bought again recently, and that's my landing net. So I use sort of like the old scope rods, sort of retractable butt rods, and for them, I've not bought a scope net because they're outrageously expensive. It's like 200 quid for a landing net, which I'm not prepared to spend the money on. So a JRC Specialist 42-inch landing net. So it's got a two-piece handle and net, and I've had mine for probably 6 or 7 years, and they're discontinued. And I randomly looked on eBay last week, and there was one up for sale, brand new. Must have been old stock and I picked it up for 25 quid, brand new. And it's shit hot, me, absolutely shit hot net. Like putting them up and breaking it down. It is the easiest net I have ever owned or ever put up and put down. I just think they're fantastic bits of kit, perfect for my needs. So I've got my two landing nets again now.
What was the what net was that? I missed that.
JRC Specialist.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, it's discontinued now, mate. But yeah, it's just a two-piece carbon handle. And the net itself, like I said, just goes up and down a dream. Like you can do it near enough, sort of one-handed with the net pole, like jam between your legs. As I keep doing, because do you know what, mate? I've got a real bad habit of I'll like get all the rods out and everything. I'll settle down into bed and I'll be like ready for sleep, and I'm just like, haven't set the net up. Like,
jeez, mate, that's awful.
It's not a good habit to be in, is it?
Fuck, mate, no.
It's because I don't.
No, it's awful.
It's because I don't catch fish anymore. So
you don't,
I'm not used.
You actually don't.
No, literally, I'm not used to putting it up. But like I say, you can put it up with one hand, mate. So I can always drag it out of my rod bag and put the thing up one-handed, playing a fish. I've done it before.
Your other like two-piece net is the Sonic one, right?
Mm.
That goes up really easy.
No, the same one, JRC one, mate.
Oh, you got two GRC nets, have you?
Yeah, yeah. That's why I was
Ah.
happy to find it. That's what I mean. So, been
Oh, okay. I wasn't listening. To be honest with you, mate, it sounded like you were rubbing sandpaper on your fucking microphone on our call.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really pissing me
Oh, it's
off. I
just
hope it
rubbing
doesn't
on
come
my
out on
collar,
the
mate. Do you know
audio.
it's the perfect? No, it won't. It's the perfect length just to rub on my collar,
Yeah. Just stop wearing collars when we do these calls then, maybe.
mate. I'm posh Pete. I'm always in a collar.
Yeah, I mean, it's popped up like a right douchebag, isn't
Not
it?
like Eric Cantona, mate.
Eric Cantona, that's a blast from the past. Ew, fucking hell, yeah. Is he still going?
What do you mean? He said he's alive.
Is he alive?
He just does Stella Artois adverts, doesn't he?
Does he? I don't know, mate. Don't know. Don't watch TV. All right, fair enough. Yeah. My worst buy. Oh, I'll give you another good buy just because, why not be positive? For years, I've had a Cyprinus Magmatex sleeping bag, and it's very warm, it's very good, it's great, but it's freaking heavy. It's freaking heavy, and I got rid of it. I bought another one. My girlfriend used it. I used it once, and I was just like, you know what? I just want something a little bit more modern. So believe it or not, I got the same as you because you said the bag was good and it's cheap. It was 89 quid, I think, or 85 quid, but then they did it for 75 because Angling Direct was doing it for that. Basically, I got it for 75 quid. That was a Sonic 5-season sleeping bag. Did my first night in it Tuesday night. It's Thursday now, isn't it? Yeah, Tuesday night. It's a good bit of kit, mate. I think it's pretty good, especially for the money.
Mate, well, praise. It's really good.
Yeah.
Do you find, like I told you before, like the zip doesn't go all the way down? So if you're really hot, I tend to like poke a foot out, but you can't zip it all the way down to poke your foot out. It does my head in.
You said about getting out, it's annoying as well.
No, not so much. I just like to poke my foot out, mate. But
Doesn't bother me. I mean, I've got a summer bag. I've got a lovely lightweight Witchwood summer bag. I got one for worst buy. I got a Witchwood, I don't know what it's called, unhooking mat, and it's not the best.
ooh,
to be honest with you. Yes,
because that's the same mat as mine, but the much newer version. Mine's ancient.
it's the newer. It's the newer version. Yeah, I like the Tracker Armo. My old Tracker Armo mat. I used to really like that. But anyway, now I got this Witchwood thing. Just the bits of Velcro that hold it together, and I carry it like I'll go stalking or whatever. They're just like wearing away. They're gonna break anytime soon, and that's not good. All I carry in it is like a net, and like maybe a bits bag, like, and a bit of bait, maybe a beer or two, and that's it. It's not that heavy, is it? And it's already wearing out. I'll give you another one now that I'm on a roll. I have a Pro Logic coat that I bought last winter. I bought it around about this time last winter. It's just fallen to, well, by the end of the winter, it was falling to pieces. Absolutely falling to pieces. The zip broke off. There's holes in the pocket. The stitching has come undone. I think it's called a Pro Logic Light Thermo jacket. It was only about 70 quid, maybe 60 quid, something like that. But still, mate, not the best build quality. So yeah, I would say those are my worst purchases recently. And actually, sod it, Mr. Positive's gone. Whilst I'm on a roll, I tell you what I hate. If the question was, what bit of tackle do you despise but you feel like you have to have, I'll tell you exactly what my answer would be. A freaking barrow. I cannot tell you how much I fucking hate barrows. Am I alone on this? Are you with me, Pete, or not?
I mean, they're really fantastic bits of kit, mate, if you need to transport your gear long distances.
Oh, they're fucking great. They're great. Once they're all loaded up, you want to walk around, they're fucking fantastic. I just despise loading that fucking thing in my car.
Dude, this is...
Putting it up, dismantling the fucking thing. It's all it's in the way. It's scratching my fucking
for the listener,
seats and...
For the listener, Sam's got ridiculous like Mercedes sports coupe thing. It's like the least carpy car you can have, and you
Wow.
cram all your gear in the back of this thing. I'm not surprised, mate. You need to get yourself a van, like get yourself a carp wagon.
For a start, you just cross the line. Second of all, mate, it's not that bad. It's not that outrageous at all. It's just a car, mate. It's a hatchback. It's actually not that nice.
Mm. It's
Yeah,
annoying.
there's a long story. Yeah, it's annoying. There's a long story why I've got that car, which I won't go into right now. But I'm gonna be getting another one. I've actually got like my girlfriend's car I can use for fishing. I just never bother taking it. Because you get into her car after driving mine. I don't want to sound like a douchebag, but it's like getting in a fucking, I don't know, like a freaking archaic piece of machinery. It's it's just awful. Anyway,
God,
probably edit this bit out.
yeah, tough in it being you. Do you know what? My mate's got a van. He's a builder, and when I go away fishing with him, he picks me up at like stupid o'clock in the morning or whatever, and I just wheel my barrow out of the house into the back of his van, and it's just perfect. Like, I want to get a van, mate. Because you wheel the barrow in, wheel the barrow out, stick it in the shed, in the garage, you're done. That's your fishing done, sorted.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, they're fucking great. I tell you what, though, I mean, how many cars did I go through back in the day when I was fishing? Shed loads. Mm-hmm. I used to like having a shitty old car. You just park it by the lake, stand on the roof. Remember doing that on my old bloody Peugeot 306 or whatever it was.
The thing with the big rims.
Big rims, what was that?
That was your Peugeot, wasn't it? Your 306?
Mate, whilst we were at the Pads Lake, I had 4 Peugeots. 4 fucking Peugeots, all 306s.
Yeah.
No, 3. I had the red one that Chris drove into the side of. And then I had 2 black ones, one with power steering, one without power steering. So it's 3 306s. The 2 black ones were real close to each other. I think the first one only lasted about, I don't know, 6 weeks or something, mate.
You had a Clio at one point as well.
Oh, the Clio. That was later on.
Was it?
Yeah, that was later on.
You had like a little yellow, like Renault Megane, like coupe or something.
That was earlier. Yeah, that was. Yeah. I had that. Yeah, I had that for a while. I had so many cars, mate. Do you remember my little RAV4, the battered old 4x4 type
God,
thing?
I do. Yeah, why that lasted weeks as well, didn't it?
Remember when I took you off roading in it?
Yeah, it was a 2-wheel drive RAV4, which you took me off roading in. It never was intended to go off road ever.
No, I don't even think it was a RAV4, wasn't it? The one it was old.
I wouldn't know, mate. I wouldn't know.
Don't know. It was battered old thing.
God, yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, mate. Then I had the Baton. Remember the Baton?
No.
And I blew the engine up in it.
No.
Just ran it dry of oil. It chewed through so much oil. I only had that about 3 months. Baton, it was really quick.
I don't remember that at all.
No, it had like the pillarless door in the windows.
Oh, you were proud. I remember you being proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
totally blew that up and just lost all the money on that.
I remember doing a night down at Porth, and I think that was a car. You drove over and just fell into my swim at like 12, like 1 a.m. in the morning. And I was just like, "You all right, mate?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I just thought I'd just come and drop in." And then literally you're about to go and you're like, "By the way, I've got no fuel." And you're like, "You're going to have to drive me to the fuel station." And you had to like buy a jerry can to get yourself home.
Oh, shit, mate. This in the reservoir in the middle of nowhere?
No, it was
no, the one you pour near Newquay. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, thanks, mate, for ruining my session."
Hey, I was out of control, wasn't I?
You're an idiot, yeah.
Yeah, it was, for the listeners, it was many, many years ago. Yeah, very irresponsible back then. But there we go. It's different times now. Different world now, mate, to be fair, isn't it?
Well, oh yeah, we get old, get responsibilities. Pandemics
Yeah.
strike the world and ruin everything. It's just
Oh
different.
gosh, so depressive. So
Yeah.
depressive.
Right. I'll tell you what.
Right.
Before we end that question, mate, I'll go on to a positive here. A goodbye,
Ooh.
mate. This is an NGT bit of tackle, yeah.
Oh my
I
god.
know. It's basically, I
Okay.
don't know the name of it. It's got like the Corda, like rig safe. It's not a rig safe. It's like tackle safe or something. It's a little bit box basically, and they have ripped Corda off really well. And it's like the Corda one's like 25, 30 quid or something just for a little tackle box. And NGT have done one, and I think it's like a tenner you can pick it up for, and it's really, really good. So there we go. 10 quid. I just need to put one of our stickers that you've had made over the NGT label. So it looks like I've not got an NGT one.
Good job penning. Ain't still at Corder, eh?
Yeah, isn't it just? Whew.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, nice, mate. I'll tell you a good buy I've had, actually. Fox, the new Fox alarms. What are they? RX Plus?
Oh, you like them, do you?
RX Plus, something like that. The new Fox ones. I do. I think they're very good alarms, actually. Yeah. Yeah. I had the NTXRs when they came out. Actually, I think I had the NXRs when they first came out. And I liked them. I had the old RXs, loved them. And yeah, I think these are good as well, mate. I think they're very, very good. So there we go. Anyway, I think we've done that question to death and given quite a few answers, haven't we?
I think so, mate. We are getting towards 50 minutes in. We've got a lot to go through.
Woo! Next question, Pete.
Cool. How you choose? Oh, so sorry. So this is from S Broadhurst. I'm going to call him Stuart. How do you choose or narrow it down to a certain bait for a water, and how you apply it to it? So yeah, how do you choose or narrow it down for a certain type of bait for a new water, and how do you apply it? I've got quite a boring response to it, but sort of like for me, I'll just turn up. Say I turn up on day one with a bait that I'm confident in. Obviously, just don't go with preconceived ideas, but turn up with what you're confident in. And you know how it is, mate. But by the time you've ended that session, you're going to know so much more about the lake. You're going to know so much more about sort of like the fish habits and things. And you formulate different plans for different waters and different days. So it's a tough one to answer, isn't it? It's just a case of go with what you're confident with. And when you're there, you're going to have sort of like an earning or a yearning to try different things. And you build a picture within your mind of how you want to approach it. And I think that's just like natural for everybody who's into their fishing, really, wouldn't you say?
I would, yeah. But if we were to think like, okay, from this guy's perspective, he wants the question answered. So let's presume, make an assumption, which might be incorrect, that was it Mr. Broadhurst?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember his first name. Let's call him Mr. Broadhurst, Mr. B. He's looking to get on a new venue at some point, or he has, and he's just not sure what to do bait wise. I would say whatever bait you're confident in, like start with that for sure, and then change accordingly. Or if you're not really confident of a bait yet, go on to something proven. I mean, look at the time of year. The fish are going to be on the feed right now. They are feeding up still. I don't think that happens, as much as sometimes people like to think, but still they're going to be feeding. So I would get a good quality boilie on the go now. Let's say you're fishing through the same water through the winter. Probably want to start establishing. Well, I've definitely started establishing my winter bait, or at least I did have. Establish that winter bait now. Get that going in now. Choose a good bait company. So let's say Baitworks. I'll choose them just because I've used them before. Go and get a load of Baitworks Monster Red. Right, that's a great winter bait. Obviously, it will catch them all year round, but it's a good winter bait. Start applying that now, okay? Or if it's something else, get something else. What you could also do is find out what bait has done well in that venue. Now, I think all good baits will catch carp, but certain venues seem to do better on certain baits. We've all been to venues, or anyone that's been angling for a long time. I'm sure Mr. Broadhurst has as well, but we've all been to venues where it's like one bait is just like shined through. It's just done very well for whatever reason. Find out what that bait is on that venue and then just get on that. Um, that's the way I would go with it, really. If I wasn't sure what to do, and I'm guessing he's not sure what to do, hence the question. But yeah, like you, Pete, typically I'll just go in with a bait that I'm confident in. So let's take my recent water, for example. I've gone in with boilie that I'm confident with. I've also gone in with groats and nuts, which I'm very confident in because I've caught a lot of fish on nuts, to be honest with you, and groats. And I've just applied it in a way that I would do at a different venue. But obviously keep in mind the amount of fish in there, the amount of, quote unquote nutrient species, and you just bring all the information together and it's just kind of the starting point is common sense, I feel. I don't mean that to sound disrespectful, but I feel it is. And then you tweak things from what you learn. How quick is the bait going? Are you getting pickups from bream or tench? Da 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 da. I think that's the way you go about it, right, Pete?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. So the next question, dude, sort of leads in from the previous one, which is seasonal bait changes. Do you change, and if so, recommended flavour combos?
It does bleed on to. It bleeds into one of the previous questions. Yeah, I think we've already answered it. Or I've answered it, and you've answered it. Yeah, you have actually. I change bait. Yeah, I do. I have a winter boilie that I use or paste. Pete, you said that you have a winter pop up. You just fish in singles, mate, or would you fish over like ground bait or something, or what?
Quite often, mate, I'll just fish single hook baits. If you think you're on the fish, mate, which is key in winter, and you've got an idea of where you think they are, then just a higher track pop up. What's wrong with that? Sometimes I'll
You
fish like a bag of pellet or something, but quite often I'm fishing venues with a lot of bream and things. So not all the time.
you just fish for a bite at a time, right?
A lot of the time, mate, yeah. But that's how my fishing goes. I don't dedicate a lot of time to it. So
What about keeping the bait going in so they keep feeding through the winter? Are you advocate of that or not?
yes, probably I would say so. But it doesn't mean I necessarily do it. Like I sort of keep alluding to, like it's something I used to do a lot in the past. Nowadays, I just genuinely don't have the time to introduce a lot of bait or keep it going in. And I think the key, especially in winter, is little and often. So if you can put in your sort of handful or two every day or every other day, then fantastic. But you don't really want to necessarily get down there once or
Yeah.
twice a week and bait heavy. Do you know what I mean? So it's not something I
By
can do a great deal of.
by the way, you want to make sure that they're eating it as well. That's crucial to
Yeah.
say. There's no point just putting it in an area that you just want to fish, or you got to make sure that those fish are eating that. I mean, that's the case whenever you do any pre-baiting, but even more so in winter because those fish move around a lot less in the depths of winter. You've got to make sure it's being eaten.
Or a bait that's going to be breaking down and the boilies might sort of break down bacteria and then float to the surface. You just don't want sort of like a big dead rotting bait left there for a number of weeks.
Yeah, but also you want to be making the most of your time. You don't want to be putting it in somewhere. It doesn't matter if it floats. I mean, obviously, if it's not going to be eaten, you want it to float off and not be an issue. But if you're going to be putting the time, energy, effort, and money in, you want to make sure it's being eaten, don't you?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're defeating the object of keeping them feeding because they ain't going to keep feeding, so they ain't eating it.
It's not always easy to tell though,
But
is it? Where you are, you're blessed with crystal clear pits and things. Down here, it's not so much the case.
crystal clear pits, but you can't see all the spots. Yeah, there's all the masses of weed that are dying as well. That this time of year they're drifting everywhere, and yeah, it's not easy. But yeah, what was the part two of that question? Was recommended flavor combos? Did you say? It's a prime question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In winter, is this?
Mm-hmm. So one of the baits I did well a long time ago, this was, which you'll remember, like a flavour combo I used was I think at the time it was a CC Moore, just their standard cream. It might be a clotted cream or it's a cream kajausery type flavour. I use that in conjunction with a lime essential oil and a black pepper essential oil, which did really well for a little flavour combo. Other than that, I've discussed it now multiple times. My go-to winter pop-up that I make every year. What about yourself, dude?
I got some lime essential oil in the post
Did
today.
you?
By the way,
Where'd you get it from?
Yeah, I did. I've been messing around with oils for life since Dean recommended them. Yeah, I've got.
I think Dean has
a few of their oils.
Put a bit of business their way from this podcast. The amount of questions we've had about essential oils, and I know a few different listeners have been ordering through them now, through messages to us. So Dean has certainly done them a favour on the Carp front.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I just got some of that. Which I'll be testing out. I got a load of bait from CC Moore years ago that had been. I got a special deal. I can't remember why I needed it now, but that was the live system and it had lime oil in it, and I caught quite well on that. Yeah,
I got.
What are you going to say, mate? You keep over talking me
every time.
You're doing it now.
Should we keep going on?
Well, just pause. No, I just want you to pause a little bit when we're talking. I'm being serious because this is loads of editing for me.
I got a free set of pop-ups once from CC Moore, is what I was going to say. And they were chocolate malt and lime sort of flavour. They were bright green. Interestingly enough, never caught a fish on them. And I'm an advocate for sort of like the lime essential oil. So, yeah. Boring fact.
Yeah.
Cheers.
I mean, all like winter flavour combos for me, like that, the fruit aminos that I called the fruit aminos, that caught really well for me. So I made these orange pop-ups and it had amino acids in. I think it probably had citric acid, possibly betaine, and a flavour combo in there. And I can't remember it exactly. I think I'm pretty close to it, but I can't be 100% sure. I found a recipe, but I don't know if that's the one. Anyway, long boring story. That was very good for me. Clove and guava, clove essential oil with a guava flavour was good for me. That was a Bill Cotton recipe. Aside from that, I'm a huge fan of cinnamon in the winter. I've said this several times. That's a good essential oil to use in the winter. Cinnamon essential oil. I won't say too much more than that, but yeah, those are a few good ones to go on. Ester. There's bases of flavors. Many people will know this. Many people won't. But the flavor might be on a PG base. It might be on ethyl ester base. Might be on a glycerol base. Look at the base that it's on. An EA ethyl alcohol base will leach out quite quickly and readily in the colder water. That would be favorable to a glycerol based flavor. Or what you could do is pair them both together, so you have a two-pronged attack in terms of leach off. So you've got the EA leaching off pretty quickly, and then you've got the glycerol or whatever it may be that's leaching off a bit slower. That would be something that I would look at. Yeah, I like the various esters from Solar. I used quite a few Solar flavors back in the day. I loved Esterberry. I loved Esterben 12. And Winter Secret was a real favorite of mine as well. Black and Blue as well. I like that flavor. Solar did some good flavors. Shit, I mean, there's so many good flavor combos. But in terms of winter, cinnamon is a great essential oil. And I would look at some EA ethyl alcohol flavors to go alongside that. Do you want to add and build on that, Pete?
No,
help him out a bit.
I don't think so, mate. I think you've sort of summed it up quite well with the flavour bases. a combo of them, definitely in the depths of winter, is not a bad thing, is it?
No, no, it's not. And do you know what? All year round, great flavour is maple. Um, Said that before, I think, haven't I?
Yeah, again,
Maple.
I've genuinely never used it, mate. A maple flavour, and I know you talk about it a lot. And then with the podcast with Dean as well, it's sort of it just reaffirmed to me it's something I should definitely use in conjunction with a few other bits and pieces.
Yeah, I'm smelling it right now. Maple flavour. If you, it just there's something about that. It takes me back, and B, it just smells like it's gonna catch. I don't know. I'm a big fan of maple. Really am a big fan.
Which,
Don't know if you remember me using that back in the day.
yeah, no, I don't remember it back in the day, but I know you've used it a lot recently. And when we did our sort of first social together, your sort of like your homemade baits, you were using the maple flavour and the specials.
I also added years ago. I added maple to activate. I can't remember how I went about that, but somehow I rolled activate, or I rolled a bait with the activator. And I added extra maple, something like that. I can't. My memory fails me. But I've been messing with maple for many years, on and off. Yeah, I rate it.
Which one have you got at the moment?
Nowadays, I use the John Baker maple. It's great. It's nice, thick, dark, rich brown kind of. Yeah, it's a proper maple. It's a very good maple flavour. John Baker maple is very good. Very, very good. I got his maple cream as well, which I believe is just a 50-50 blend between his maple and his dairy cream flavour. Might be wrong on that. I think it's a blend of two of his flavours. I can't quite remember right now. My memory's going to shot to pieces, mate. It's never been good, but it's getting worse. But yeah, maple wise, yeah, John Baker. I like that. And I'll put that with a little bit of fenugreek oleo resin. There's a little gift for you, little top tip.
Any fenugreek in there itself in its powder form?
No,
Ooh,
I've got the oleo resin.
happy with that. It's doing the job for you.
Happy with the oleo, 100%. Yeah.
Nice. The flavour I used to use a lot, do really well on, was the old chocolate malt, like the Hutchie's chocolate malt.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be vastly different now.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I wasn't getting the original anyway, I don't think. And then I had problems with ordering new batches, and it's just different consistency between batches, but it certainly did very well for me, mate. And I know it's not a flavour combo, but I used to use it with molasses in my bait back then. And it's something I always think of revisiting because, again, I don't know if it's rose tinted glasses, but I used to catch a lot more fish back then. A lot more.
But you used to fish. I mean, the water that you're fishing at the minute, okay, you've only done 3 nights actually, but it's a bloody hard water. As well as that, I think you used to maybe be a bit more dedicated back then. I think we fueled each other.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, quite possibly. So the next question, Sam, this is perfect for us. Throwback carp, do's and don'ts for pioneering in France. Give them your advice, buddy.
Throwback carp.
That's the name of the. That's the name. That's the handle.
Oh. I thought you was like, do you throw them back or not when you're in France? I was like, shit.
No, mate. Yeah, do's and don'ts for pioneering in France.
Wow, I tell you what, I am the wrong person to answer this. I've been to France once, and that was when I was a little kid with my parents. Yeah, I've never fished in France, to be honest, so I wouldn't have a clue how to answer that. I've stuck to England for my carp angling. That's not to say I wouldn't go abroad and angle. I just think there's probably a lot I'd do in England before doing that. But yeah, so I can't answer that question, unfortunately. Pete, I don't think you can.
No,
can you?
I went to Euro Disney once, mate. Yeah, that's my French experience. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
we can't really help with that one.
Mm.
Um, so the next one is from Nucci, and it's a carp senses, as in what do they see and how strong is their sense of smell?
Um, very strong.
Hmm.
It's not really that's anthropological. I'm pronouncing that right. It's not really. It's yeah. It is smell, but it's chemoreception. It's smell. It's taste. It's kind of all of the senses mixed together. But it's very sensitive. Very sensitive. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean, if you chuck some frickin' pellet in a pond, one end, and then on the other side of the pond, 10 acres away, they're going to smell it and like make a beeline for it. It's not that sensitive, of course. But compared to our senses, they're very, very heightened. I wouldn't like to. I mean, you wouldn't be able to put a number on it, but I wouldn't like to guess how many times more powerful their senses are than ours. But I would imagine it would be quite considerable. So yeah, they can smell the bait, taste, but they can do that very efficiently.
Hmm. Yeah, and what about their eyesight, mate? So I often
Oh,
conflict myself with this. Do you know what I mean? So from a stalking sort of point of view, I've become a lot more wary of how I position myself, and I think years gone by, I don't know if this is a thing that changes from water to water, and carp are more clued in and wary from waters to waters. But nowadays, I find if I don't position myself sensibly on the bank, the carp know I'm there. They see me, whether they see a break in the light in the tree line, and that's something they're familiar with. So there's a change in that. But I think they know you're there, and I think a lot of the time it is through sight. Regarding what they see bait wise, they can certainly see, but how good their eyesight is, sort of when selecting different baits, I haven't really got an opinion on. I don't know about you, buddy.
yeah, I think their eyesight is very good. I think it's very, very good. We could get into the light spectrum that they see and things like that, but I think that combo is probably one to save for when we've got Dean back on, Dean
Mm-hmm.
Towie. We did a bait episode with him. He will be coming back on. He's got some great ideas about that, and he knows more about that than I do. So we'll probably wait for him to get it before we get into that side of things. But yeah, I think their eyesight is very good. They definitely see us when we're outside. When we're outside of the water, obviously, they definitely see us. They, you, you're not as sly as you perhaps think you are. They can definitely see you. They definitely see movement above the water surface. But I think something that's really overlooked is vibrations and your foot landing on the floor. That vibrates. That really does travel through the ground. I've spoke about this quite a few times, I think, maybe in the earlier episodes. But that vibration really does travel to them, and they will pick that up on the lateral line very efficiently. I gotta be honest, Pete. We used to be so quiet, and I still am. When I went fishing with you the last time, I was shocked at how noisy you've become.
Yeah, well, we had this chat, and you kept moaning about my footprints, and I was like walking behind you on the bank, turn round
No,
and be
this
like, "This is
wasn't.
just ridiculous."
No, this wasn't walking around the lake. This was in your swim, clattering bucket, like popping bucket lids off, sitting down in your chair, chucking shit on the floor. You made so much noise, mate. I really found it quite surprising.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think I don't know, mate. It was a bit of a social, wasn't it? Like we,
Well, you got very noisy, mate. Very
fair
noisy.
enough.
Slack, mate. It's
Uh,
just a sign of you being slack.
yeah, thanks.
It's all
I'll
right,
tell you
mate.
what. When I fish on my own, I'm so conscious of it.
Hmm.
I don't know if I let my guard down.
I kept moaning at you that you're making a lot of
Yeah, it was
noise, and
bugging
you
me because
seem
whenever we'd do anything, I was like, I can't believe he's having a go at me for making noise.
you're over talking me whilst I'm talking to you.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it just surprised me. But anyway, to answer the question, yeah, I think their eyesight is very good. Definitely think about their line of sight out of the water, to you and what's behind you. You know, as Pete said, your shape moving across like a clear blue sky is going to be super obvious to them. And I think in terms of bait and things like that, yeah, I mean they can see a lot. And this, I used to have a real paranoia about having the same color hook length to the lake bed and try and blend everything into the lake bed. I worry far less about that these days, because if you look at the lake bed, it depends what kind of lake you fish. I mean, I fish weedy waters, there's always debris kicking around. You look at the amount of like little twigs and bits of dead weed and stuff, stones around. They're constantly seeing different bits of debris. So I'm less worried about blending everything in now. I think like a big, long, obvious bit of lead core, yeah, okay, maybe I wouldn't go down that route. But I think by and large, you know, I don't worry too much if, you know, I've got a weed green lead on and I'm fishing over gravel. It don't really bother me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So go on then. So talking about, you've just mentioned sort of weedy lakes. The next question sort of goes into presentation as well. So it is fishing in weed and in particular line lay when fishing across weed into spots. Now you're probably the person to ask about this because you're fishing very weedy venues these days. A lot of my work's just right in the edge at the moment, so I've got nothing to talk about. So go on, I'll be interested to hear your opinions on that, and then I've got a question for you as well.
Yeah, sure, mate. So what was the question? Line lay in weed?
Essentially, yeah. So fishing in weed and in particular line lay when fishing across weed into spots. So you might be fishing over a weed bed into a clear spot, for example.
Right. So, I mean, am I worried about it? Yeah, it factors in. Um, and here's where it's difficult. I like a sinking line, right? For literally most of my angling, I like a nice heavy sinking line. I use braid now, especially as I'm fishing weedy lakes, and the braid that I use, it really does sink phenomenally well, like really well. That can be a problem because it can bed into the weed over a period of time, which, and it'll affect your indication a little bit, but bearing in mind, you know, indication on braid is very, very heightened. So I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, it can get caught in the weed a little bit. I'm not too worried about that either. It's something you got to really get over, if that makes sense. Now, if you're fishing a little hole that's the size of a dinner plate, I mean, good luck casting to that accurately, but let's just say it's in close, you're dropping it in there. Your leader is going to be coming up, isn't it? It's not going to be lay flat along the bottom. I wouldn't worry about that because they're used to touching weed. They're used to things touching them on the flanks. It's just going to seem like a strand of weed or you know, dead weed or something like that. I wouldn't worry about that. As for bigger areas that are like the size of a car, for example, you can get your leader all flat against the deck, the lake bed. Your line's going to come up. I mean, do they see that solid line and spook off it? Yeah, maybe. If they feel it, does it feel a bit different from the weed? Yeah, probably. But there's not much you can do about it. What I've done with my braid for the last sort of, I don't know, 20 foot of braid before it meets my leader, I've just got a black marker pen and just intermittently like coloured it in, if that makes sense. Just so it's breaking up that solid line. I think the solid line is an issue. I think little patches, I think that's less detectable, particularly if it's laying over a weed bed. You know, if you colour up intermittently, colour up your braid, lay it over a weed bed, you can't really see it. You really can't. If you're using something like fluoro, yeah, that reflects the light, so that's much more noticeable. It depends at what angle the carp is looking at it in relation to the light as to whether they're going to see it or not. I think if they feel that against their flank, particularly if they travel along it a little bit and it rubs on them, I think they could probably tell what that is and they're going to spook. But ultimately, if that's where the fish are, or if that's where the fish are feeding, that's where you must fish. So it's not a case of, oh, the carp are all in this area and they're feeding on this area. But do you know what? My line lay isn't going to be perfect, so I won't bother fishing from it. Do you know what? You just got to take it on the chin. Do what you can. Do little things like colouring in the line. But ultimately, you just got to understand that you're not presented perfectly. Your line's going to be sticking up out the water. It's not like it would be if it was on a perfectly flat lake bed with no weed. It's a compromise. But by and large, I do what I can, and then I just do not worry about it. It's not really something that features in my mind to any great degree. What I will say to that, though, is I wouldn't have a tight line coming through a section where that was like their patrol route. Think about where the fish are coming into the spot. Generally, you'll see patterns. Some of the patterns on some of the fish, when I say patterns, their places of movement are remarkably regimented on some fish, in my opinion. That's what I've found anyway. Don't bang a tight line in that path, obviously, and expect them to just ignore it and go down and suck up your hook bait. It's be a bit sensible, but by and large, you just got to get over it.
So for general fishing in weed, what's your approach? Because you're quite happy, like these days, to fish straight in the weed if you have to, aren't you? I'm right in saying that.
Well, when you say straight in the weed, you mean having a hook bait in the weed? Yeah, I mean, I'll happily find a clear... If I'm using bait, right, I'll happily find a clear spot, have one on the clear spot, and then, one just in the weed. Now, when I say one in the weed, I'm not chucking a inline lead with a short hook length into a 6-foot weed bed. Obviously, that's not going to be the one. But if it's lower line weed and you can put something like a 360 rig, or maybe even a chod rig or a hinge stiff, chuck something like that on a helicopter setup into lower lying weed. So basically your hook bait is just like a bit of boilie or whatever suspended in the weed. I'll happily fish like that. Yeah, I like fishing like that, mate. I've caught quite a few of out of the decent fish I've caught this year. I've caught quite a few fish like that. Well, several at least.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's something that you said, especially moving up to where you're fishing now, is something you really have to get your head around.
Yeah. I mean, the lakes up here are a lot weedier than what I'm used to in Cornwall. We get weedy lakes, but not quite the same. So yeah, it's just one of those things you got to get over, and you got to adapt to it pretty quickly. Its presentation is the key here, right? You have to be presented. There's no good banging a rig into a weed bed and your hook's all caught up on it. Look, you're not going to catch. Of course you're not. But if you use a helicopter, as long as you're confident that that hook link is ridden up and the lead in the lower part of the leader is penetrated down to the surface of the lake bed, and then that hook link is lay across the weed the best way it can be. You can't really do this with a bottom bait. You could do, but the chances of it being presented are slimmer. So, you want a pop-up for this, in my opinion. Or at the least, a slow-sinking wafter. Yeah, as long as you're presented over that weed, a carp will pick that off. And I feel that they're almost easier to hook like that, because if you're fed up a spot, you see it. I mean, we've all seen this. The carp will feed on the spot, then they'll go off, and then they'll come back. Figure out where they're either going off or ideally where they're coming back in. It can work both ways. Both are good. They both have their place, but work out where that is. Put a single bait there that's maybe half a rod length or two rod lengths off of that spot. that carp is gonna pick that up, that hook bait up, generally with relative confidence, I think, and B, it's generally moving a bit quicker whilst it grabs that. It's easier to hook that way. So yeah, if I can present in the weed, I will do that. But at the same time, the amount of times I've been up a tree, I've been fishing in close, and I've done that, and carp have completely ignored it. I mean, this is the problem. We can hypothesize and we can look at these patterns, but then you'll always get that session where something, it just doesn't work that way. That's just fishing, though, isn't it? So in the same respect, I like to have one on the spot. If I'm baiting up, I like to have a rig on that baited spot. I don't like having it in the middle. I always try and have it to the edge. It's just how I fished for probably most of my carp angling anyway. But yeah, sorry, I'm probably waffling now, mate. Probably gone off on tangent. But yeah, I'll present in weed. No worries at all.
Yeah. You traditionally, well, should I say traditionally, but your main go-to sort of setup's a helicopter, isn't it?
Yeah, I fish helicopter, or I'll fish if I'm on a hard spot. I fish an inline rig, heavy inline lead, with a fairly short hook length. Yeah, that's just general. I'd change it if the occasion needed something different. But yeah, generally, I find myself banging out, at least one rod on a heli, with like a hinge stiff or something, and then at least one with a with an inline and a shorter rig on.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much sums it up, mate. A lot of my fishing isn't necessarily really weedy waters, and yeah, I fish waters with weed in, but I'll often find like fish to a clear spot on the side of a weed bed or etc. I very rarely fish in the weed because it's not something I'm always up against. I think like the main experience I've got is maybe sort of like like when you've got like thick, dense like lily beds or fringe lilies, maybe in the winter time when they die off. I think they're a really good sort of place to hold natural food and fish sort of like hold up in. And I fished in amongst the like a dead sort of like bed of fringe lilies, and I'll just happily fish a pop up on a helicopter with a nice light lead, that sort of set up in amongst there. But sort of like fishing in weed is a completely different kettle of fish where you are compared to a lot of the lakes in Cornwall.
Yeah. And I mean, look, by the way, I should have said this. I mean, this is if I'm fishing in close, right? And I can actually see that I'm in the weed and I'm all good, from climbing up a tree or what have you. I mean, if I'm casting out a fair distance, I want a decent drop. I want to be in silt, but then again, I got to be clear it's silt, which there tends to be not many of those silty spots on the lakes I fish. But I want to basically, if I'm casting out, I want to know that I'm not in weed. So totally the opposite. Because your hook length could be caught up on something. I mean, I will say I always cast out, or it's rare for me to not cast out without a PVA foam nugget on, so I'm getting like a slower drop on the hook length, so it's presented. That helps. That really, really does help presenting in weed. But yeah, if I'm casting out and I can't see what's going on there, I want a decent donk. And I'll in that scenario, I'd have my rigs on the deck. I might have a pop up to the side of it, but generally on the area that I've baited, when I'm chucking it out, I like those baits to be on the deck, same as the free offerings, and I like a nice solid donk. And that can work against you because obviously the solid areas can get done to death. But then that's the trade-off against knowing that you're presented. And if you're not presented, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, oh, it's been done to death and they're wised up to that area. But if you're not presented, you definitely ain't going to get a pickup, are you? But if you are presented, that you can. And then then just to roll on from that, I think that's where bait becomes more important. Because you can go on these done to death areas, but maybe you're giving them something totally different bait-wise. Maybe you're putting a bait out there that intermittently is floating up or something, or it's got a completely different attractor profile. I think it's very easy to shine through on the bait front. I really do. A lot of people that probably won't really get that, but there's a lot of great baits out there. There's a lot of great boilies out there, but there's also a lot of things that get forgotten that people don't do, and it presents the carp with something completely different. And I think those fish that are clued up and they are a little bit switched on and a bit on edge from the angling pressure, I think those kind of things, that really is what makes a difference. I truly believe that.
No, mate, it's yeah, so fair enough. Everyone's got their own little niches and things that they do, don't they? So I was just literally scrolling back through our message history to the next question, and we're pretty much on the last one, I believe, mate. The last one of any substance, anyway.
Really? Have we done 11?
I don't think we've done all 11, but I cannot remember which one we haven't done, because a lot of them are bait related and sort of like going into winter. Do you know what I mean? I'll go through them. So we did winter baits from Jim and their application. We've done best and worst buys, how to narrow it down to a certain bait in winter, seasonal bait changes, bait quantity. Yeah, we did that. Bait quantity on low stock venues.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did, from Jungle Warfare Clothing.
No, we didn't. We didn't go into it. You changed the question.
Ooh, I'm sure we did.
We didn't. You mentioned it, and then I said, no, why don't we do one that is a little bit different to all the other questions?
Okay. And the only one then that we haven't done is just single hook baits.
Single hook baits and the one from Jungle Warfare, who I messaged back, which is about bait quantity on low stock venues. We didn't answer that one.
Cool.
What should we do first? Let's do single hook baits, shall we? You've already spoken about those a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a go-to tactic for you in winter, right? Do you use them at other times of the year or not?
Yeah, I do. Depends on the lake I'm fishing. If I'm fishing a day ticket venue, then yeah, quite often I'll fish single hook baits. Reason being is day tickets, I think, generally see a shitload of bait, and they get outrageous quantities of bait quite regularly. From your average sort of angler who just turns up, he might have 48 hours or something, and he'll turn up and bait heavy and then sit over it. And I think single hook baits in that situation are a really good edge. The fish feed, they're a little bit less wary, maybe, like you were saying about fishing to the edge of a baited spot earlier. I think that's a real edge. So it could be a bottom bait, it can be a pop-up, it can be whatever you like. But a single hook bait, I think, certainly has its place in a day ticket venue that's under high pressure. And in the winter time, yeah, I often sort of will fish single hook baits, and I will fish them in a situation where if I'm fishing for 24 hours and I'm fishing in an area where I know the fish frequent or I know they hold up, I'd be happy to leave that bait there for a long time. So say if I was fishing 3 rods, like 2 of them I'm quite happy to leave there. If I know I'm presented and I know it's areas where the fish often sort of visit, I'll just leave them. I will leave them there. And a 3rd rod I will quite happily use as a roving rod and just chuck to showing fish. Again, in the winter I pretty much move to primarily pop-ups. I've said it many times on the podcast. I'm probably doing myself a misjustice, but it's just what I do. I revert to type.
So with your single hook baits, these are baits you're rolling yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, would you tweak up a hook bait if it was, say if you've got like a dairy cream type hook bait? Do you have a version that you would fish with bait and then a version you would fish on its own, or would you just use the same roll, same mix?
Generally, I use the same mix. Now, I'll use the same mix, but in the winter, I find I prime my pop-ups or add sort of drip feed flavour onto them a lot more than I would do through the summer months. Again, whether you could call that then boosted or whatever, but it's going to be kicking out a little bit more attraction maybe in the colder water. Just trying to do myself like a little bit of a favour there, I guess. But no, I'll the actual mix when I'm making them, I'll make them exactly the same.
Yeah, see, I'm not a fan of adding the neat flavour to a hook bait. Like for me, I just think I think that's kiss of death for some fish. I think it'll get you some bites, but I think some fish would really spook off that, and that really worries me. You don't find that that's the case?
Not necessarily, because I don't just add neat flavour. I'll add sort of like a liquid attractor, and I'll just add exactly everything I add to the boiled bait. But over time, once they've sort of absorbed everything and dried and gone rock hard again, I'll drip feed a little bit more on there. Yeah, I can understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I think with winter fishing, quite often you're fishing for that sort of like a bite at a time, where you're fishing for a bite. Um, in my head, anyway, I wouldn't say I've never targeted a certain fish. I don't think in the winter months. It's a bit weird. I've never thought about this, but sort of going through it now, it's never a sort of a time of year where I'll target a certain fish, or I'll be targeting the sort of like the lake's bigger residents. When I go fishing in the winter, I'm happy for a bite, if that makes sense.
Do you? But you fish the same waters, right? Or you move on to a water where there's more fishing.
Um, this year I'll be fishing the same waters. Yeah. Previous years, a lot of my winter fishing, I've moved on to sort of like a day ticket, higher stock venues.
So you're gonna go all the way through on your new
No,
water?
I'm not.
Oh, you just said you
Yeah,
were.
yeah. No, I'm not on this water now. No, I won't. I'm not going to fish all the way through.
I was gonna say that would be hardcore.
It would
mate.
be just going out camping.
Oh, do you want my little opinion
You
on it?
can do, mate. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I can do. Listeners, that means he doesn't want it because he knows what I'm going to say, and then he's going to feel like he has to do it. I reckon you could do well there on winter. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, you could do terrible there. You could go all winter without catching, but I honestly think. I mean, look, it's a deep pit, right? I think if you get it right in winter, I think carp are dumbed down in winter. I think they're a bit more stupid. I think they're easier to catch in winter. I think it just becomes harder to locate them. I think they can get locked up with food if the wrong food's gone in, etc. But just imagine, Pete, if you found, I mean, they're probably going to be shoaling up. If you found that small stock of fish in that water, you found out whereabouts they were in winter. You could do all right, mate. I know. Look, same could be said for any water. Finding them is the hard thing. But yeah, I don't know. Food for thought, maybe. I think you'd be the only person on there, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I think.
So you got the place to yourself. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Don't know.
I mean, the thing is, it's a notoriously hard venue, and I'd like to get some fish. But I think what could do very well is, especially if you can get on a nice, warm, sunny day in the winter months, where you've got those few hours of sort of super bright sunshine on the water. I think you could do well stalking there. I really do. And like you say, when they're off guard as well in the colder months, I think it could lead to some sort of pretty epic fishing, couldn't it? In the margins and watching everything. That's how I could foresee it happening in the winter months anyway. I just don't think it's the kind of place to be tipping up for 12 hours at night. I think it could be tough.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, mate. Do you know where you're going for winter yet?
Not really. Not really, no. I've not put a lot into it. My buddy who I go fishing with down here, he's quite keen to sort of fish digger lakes up near Exeter, like quite a few nights in the winter, and he's happy to drive up and do sort of like a crazy 12-hour overnighter with the additional travel time. So I might do that a few times, see how I get on. But locally, I'll just be fishing one of the club waters with a higher stock of fish, mate.
I think there's better quality fish near you than there is in Digger. No disrespect to Digger.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Yeah. Fair enough, mate. We got off on a tangent. What was the question? Oh yeah, was it
Single hook
flavors?
baits.
No, single hook baits. So I tell you what, you use singles a lot. I used to, less so nowadays, but I used to use them a hell of a lot. What you're kind enough to tell people your old winter mix. A couple of podcast episodes ago. I think it was the podcast that was titled The Catch Up. It might have been episode number 14. I might be wrong on that. But you told us a mix in there. What mix are you going to be using this winter? Are you going to use the same one, or are you got anything else that you're playing with?
Yeah, so I'm going to use. I will use my Old Faithful pop-ups, mate, because I've got super confidence in them. But this winter, again, I think we discussed it on a previous pod, going over old ground. Apologies if we are. I've got that old bottle of Richworth Esterberry, and I was planning on combining that with an essential oil, an organic acid, and just see how it works. I don't know. I've not done it yet. I've not fished with it yet.
Is that? I used to buy Esterberry. Is that one of my old bottles?
No. I think I don't remember using the Flavour Mate. I remember you used to buy the ready-mades.
I used to really rate the ready-made Esterberry. Yeah.
Winter Bay, it was actually brilliant. Like, you had some great results, didn't you?
Oh, mate, I did. I really caught well on that Esterberry, and obviously tooties as well. But it's nice to have an alternative, and again, I like to be a bit different.
I remember you used to fish a single boilie on the hair, and then you'd crumb up one boilie in a PVA bag. Can you remember that? And a bit of mesh, just one boilie crumbed, which is just enough. Like,
But do you know what I used to do? You may or may not have known this. I used to make up loads of PVA bags with one crumb boilie and one whole boilie in. And I used to pre-bait with those all over the lake in the winter. So the thought being that looks exactly what my rig would look like, with my hook bait and little bit. I used to pre-bait like that, go through fuckloads of PAVA. Little things like that. I used to be really like lots of bit eccentric almost, wouldn't I? With lots of different things.
Yeah, but it worked.
Yeah, mate, worked really well.
I used to use the old mainline Proactive Pineapple back in those days in the winter.
That's a good flavour, mate. That is a good flavour. Yeah. Perfect. Right. Last question was from Jungle Warfare. Right now, I'm going to have to get the messages up because it was quite a big question and there was a few points to it. So I asked him for a follow-up, got chatting with him. I won't bore you with that stuff. But basically, can you read out the original question, mate? And then I'll read out RPMs.
Yeah, no worries. So, bait quantity on low stock venues, please. Struggling at the minute as there is also bream.
Yeah, so bait quantity, how much to bait up with and how much to use. I mean, it's a big question. It depends on the water. So I asked him a few questions. So his reply was he's on a water. It's about 15 acres. Depths range from 6 foot to 42 foot. There's 20 to 25 carp in. A lot have been uncaught. 20 to 25 carp in. A lot of them are uncaught. He's seen them 30-pound plus. The 6 to 15 foot of water is unfishable, basically. It's very rocky, and he sent me a picture, and it is very rocky. There's loads of bream, and they've been caught to 16 pounds. Absolute monster bream, that is. That is savage. I feel your pain, mate. I really do. They're always on the feed on the gravel bank, and it's sandy, blah, blah, blah. You can't really marker areas because the bottom's so snaggy and rocky. About 12% of the lake you can present rigs to. Yeah, that's basically it. It's 15 acres. It's not a big place, but it's up to 42 foot. A lot of it is really hard to present a bait on, and there's shitloads of bream, and there's about 25 carp in it. How the hell does he know how much to bait up, and what should he do, and yada yada yada. So it sounds similar to a lake that I did a brief spell on. Do you remember, Pete? In Devon, I did a very brief spell, but I got very, very lucky. And Pete's probably fished. Well, it's probably a little bit like the water you're fishing at the minute, isn't it, Pete? But minus. I mean, you can present pretty much everywhere, can't you? But we've fished deep pits and stuff. I mean, look. Here's the thing. In terms of the amount of bait, you've got a shed load of bream. So you have to understand that the bream are going to be munching through this. Now, from there, you have to work out, okay, well, if that's the case, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I would say it's a good thing. I think a shoal of bream, particularly big bream, I think them eating is going to, perhaps call the carp in. If you use nuts, something like that, the sound does travel underwater. I know some people say that's bullshit, but it's not. Although I think putting shells in your bait might be a bit optimistic. But anyway, so yeah, I think you should be baiting up. I really think you need to find out where those fish go, and you need to get an area going. You need to have those fish keep on visiting an area, and more importantly, feeding on that area. So I would say pick a spot that you can present a bait to, that you can ideally tell if the bait is gone. Now, I asked this guy and he can't use boats there, which to be honest has just made everything 10 times harder than it could need to be. But anyway, you need to get spots going. You need to use a decent amount of bait because there's a lot of bream in there, and you need to make sure that you're feeding the bream as well as the carp. But you definitely need to make sure that bait is getting eaten. You don't want to be putting bait upon bait upon bait and it's just going rotten. Trust me, that's the last thing that you want. So it's a bit of a tough one. It's going to be a case of trial and error. What I would say is I definitely would not rule out zigs. Now, I am by no means an accomplished zig angler, but with that kind of substrate, I think adjustable zigs could work well, particularly in winter. So the reason why I've said adjustable is you cast it in, you let the line out, so then you can see the hook bait on the surface, and then you can pull it under, and that way you know that the line is being released effectively, because it's a really rocky bottom. If you didn't have an adjustable zig, you don't know if somehow the lead is ballsed up on the substrate and you got a bit of a nightmare there. So I think adjustable zigs on a patrol route, if you can get up high, figure out where they're patrolling, I think an adjustable zig could be a good shout. And then obviously that overcomes the fact that, see, maybe this guy is finding the carp, it's just like, well, the bottom is so rocky. He sent me a picture, I wish all the listeners could see. It's very rocky. Yeah, maybe the carp are there, but you put a load of bait in, I mean, they will push stones around. You'd be really surprised. But it's not really the best place to put a bait. Sure, you could put a choddy on there and it'll be presented, but then it's quite a lot higher than the bait that's going to fall through the gaps of the rocks. It's just not the one. So maybe going for a little bit more finesse and putting a zig rig on their patrol route, maybe that might snag a bite or two. I've got shitloads I could add to that, but I just don't really know where to go because there's so much more I'd need to know on it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Pete, so far?
So I agree with you that the bream might not be a bad thing in that situation, because it's like you were saying, it sounded like the bait's going to get eaten, which is definitely a good thing. So that was my first point, and all I can talk about here is sort of relaying to my own experiences, because the venue I'm fishing is sort of quite similar, with depths and a very, very low stock of fish. Not as big, but certainly got a very low stock. And with the depths and adjustable zigs is something that's been going through my head recently. I regularly see the fish show sort of mid-water. and I'm fishing in the margins. I don't want to fish mid-water because you're looking at depths of about 40 foot. So yeah, adjustable zigs is something I've been considering, but for me, like you were saying, I am not an accomplished zig angler. I think the only fish I've caught on zigs is roach. Whenever I've tried to fish zigs, I've always managed to pick up roach, which I think is a bit odd. So I wouldn't know necessarily. It would just be a bit of a. I'd have to probably dedicate myself to it, to fishing zigs on all rods at different depths, and then you've got a problem that you're fishing a very low stock pit where the fish are hard to catch, and you're fishing zigs, a tactic you're not confident in. But I certainly think it could do well. You just got to find the depth. Even if you know where the fish are and you see them show, you've got to get your depth right, which to me is just a bit of a minefield.
Do you know something that I would? You're absolutely right, mate. Do you know something I would be looking at doing? Mm-hmm. I would be looking at getting a shitload of gravel and putting it on some areas, and then which is basically filling in the gaps of these huge rocks. I mean, I say huge rocks. The rocks are like, fist size and a bit bigger, which is enough to give you issues of presenting baits and baits falling through the gaps, etc. But I'd be looking at getting a load of gravel and getting a little area, filling in an area, literally filling in the gaps so you can present a bait on. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's probably not a bad shout.
Wow. Yes, not a bad shout. And that sort of takes me back to, again, we're talking about the weedy water where we used to fish back in the day. I don't know if you remember with the big storms one winter that one of the water level rose and one of the swims had like a big bit of ply. It was sort of decked with this huge bit of ply, and that actually sort of came loose and drifted off, and it settled up in the shallows right in amongst. So this lake was just filled to the brim of fringe lilies, wasn't it? Like completely unfishable in a lot of places. And I don't know if you remember, it blew right into like the little bay right in the back corner, and it sunk there, and it actually made just sort of like presentation perfect. You had a big section where the pads can row through, and I remember catching fish off of there. So it's a very sort of similar principle. Yeah, I think it's a good shout, mate. I really do. It's it's not normal, is it?
It's out of the box, but this guy is fishing an out of the box water, and I hope he doesn't mind us naming him. It's Jungle Warfare Clothing. Bit of a shout out to him. I've never used any of his clothes, so I couldn't comment on them. But I mean, it's a bit of that. You got to apply that to this fishing situation. It's jungle warfare. You've got to go out there. You've got to think outside the box, and you've got to do what you got to do. And I think things like that. I know there'll be some people listening like, what the hell are these boys on about? Put a load of gravel in. What a load of shit. Like, sometimes you have to do things like that. And it works, it really does. Well, I mean, look, that's something I would look at. I'd definitely look at zigs, like Pete was saying. The bream, yeah, at least they're going to be eating the bait, but there's no point just feeding the bream if you're not feeding the carp. So you really want to be figuring out where those carp go. I would say that's, if we're following on the jungle warfare theme, mission operative number 1, figure out where the fuck those carp are going, right? Or at least where they're patrolling. And then it's, mission operative number 2 is to figure out, okay, well, with all that knowledge I've now got, where is the best place I can start baiting up and start getting a bait going and start getting those fish frequenting, whatever the fucking word is. I need a place where I can get those fish constantly going to, that I can keep bait going in, and they're going to build up their confidence feeding there and get them feeding. Whether that's filling in an area with gravel or whether it's just finding an area that's not as rocky, I don't know. But that's what you got to do. And by the way, if you chuck a load of gravel in somewhere, I mean, how are you going to do that? It's going to be hard work, but you got to work for the finer things in life. when you chuck a load of that gravel in, I guarantee the carp will be investigating that. They're extremely curious creatures.
For sure.
Yeah.
Mate.
So it's gonna. So I'm kind of excited. I almost want to be fishing this place. By the way, look, I've never put a load of gravel in a lake. I've done the old add a load of topsoil in. That's an old match angling trick, but I've never actually filled in an area to create a clean spot. It's just something that came to me whilst we were chatting. But
I like it, mate. I really do. I think, like you said, the fish will investigate it for sure. And you could go a step further and you could soak that gravel in some sort of liquid food. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it would be leaching off attraction for days.
That would be awesome. My only worry with that is that the carp would be rooting around in it and displacing it all and spreading it around. So then you haven't got that nice, pretty, presentable area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know one of the lakes that I've sort of been fishing, there's been a landslide. And now all of a sudden, so this sort of like tree line margin, which is unfishable, you've now got a big gravel bed. And it has made it super presentable, and people are catching fish like crazy from it.
Where's this, mate?
Just
Where's
the
this?
local waters, local club waters. Yeah, it's been a landslide, mate, and what was a sort of really deep margins, overhanging trees, casting to it. You couldn't cast to present there, but now there's been this landslide. Yeah, it's just a big gravel bed, and people are casting to it and catching fish. Yeah.
Is this the place I put the pingers in? The seal deterrent?
Not sure.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. It's interesting. Carp especially, they're so inquisitive, aren't they? Anything like that, they're all... I mean, it's the same as when lakes flood.
Yeah.
You know, those fish, they want to explore. Like, they want to go. Mm-hmm. They're just inquisitive animals. They really are.
I'm convinced that the fish I caught sort of back in February, again, it's a really tough water back in winter. On the first night, I fluked one out, and there was a big... Well, last winter we had unprecedented amounts of rain, didn't we? And I was fishing in an area where there was just water flooding into the lake. And it smelt of sewage, mate. I pitched up and it was just running through my swim off the road and it stunk of sewage. And I'm convinced that's why I got a bite at the time. Because there was sewage going into the lake and the fish were just loving it.
100%.
Loving it.
An inlet, like a powerful inlet into any lake. If there's ever been like an overspill or if someone's pumping water in, that like go there. Honestly, the carp will fucking be there. They really will. And yeah, sewerage, even sewerage, if you think about what's going on there on you know, on a chemoreception level, I mean, that's very attractive.
For sure.
But even going back to, you know, grew up by the seaside, you did a lot of sea angling, Pete. I know I'm more coarse, you're more sea back in the old days, but like the mullet, like the sewerage outlets, that's where you get the mullet, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. They love it, don't they?
Yeah.
And again, the lake you're talking about earlier, it had the big waterfall, didn't it? But that was predominantly sort of runoff off the roads. And I always used to think, like, in the winter, when you've got all that rainfall and there's salt in the roads and grit in the roads, you're just getting all of that salt content dumping straight into that quarry. And again, it's got to be super sort of attractive to the carp. It's got to make them inquisitive and hang around that area. It's not something we've spoken about a lot, is it? Salt in the podcast.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Something I use a lot. I changed subject real quick, but we'll come back onto that. I'm surprised you haven't gone back to that place, mate. That quarry that we just spoke about with the waterfall, deep one.
It was my plan for the year, mate. It was. Yeah,
it was. What happened?
Just rejoined a local club, and it sort of took my interest. Yeah, I think I'd probably enjoy it, mate. The trouble is like you say, it's just I often moan in Cornwall because I haven't got a lot of options for big fish.
Disagree.
and the grass is always greener. I have all these wonderful ideas, and then I'll start fishing somewhere and think, oh, I really could be fishing there. A lot like you at the moment, and I can't sort of settle on a place.
The thing is that deep quarry. I mean, those fish. I mean, they're a real prize, aren't they? But
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're fishing for a decent £40 common, which in Cornwall is quite a prize, isn't it? So I understand why you're doing what you're doing. As I've said to you ever since we started this podcast and before, I mean, when we started this podcast was really when we started chatting again. We kind of went our separate ways a bit, didn't we? But if I was in Cornwall, that is where I'd be fishing. I'd be fishing where you're fishing right now. So I think you're doing the right thing.
Would you stick at it all winter long?
Mate, I'd have caught them all by then. So.
Yeah. I suppose you emptied the place last time you fished it.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. No, I didn't. No, I didn't empty the place. I did. I reckon I probably only did about 10 nights. And then I moved up here. But I spent a lot of time there. I was there more often than not in the week. And yeah, I really tuned that. I loved that place, mate. Bit of a regret of mine, to be honest with you. But at the same time, you know, would I have rathered stayed in Cornwall and seen that place through and caught them all, or caught what I wanted, or would I have rather move up here and sort of
sort your life out?
Sort my life out. Yeah, I got to sort my life out. Do you know what I mean? So I think I did the right thing. Do you think I did?
Without a doubt, mate. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
the viewers, the listeners are like discovering the dark side of Sam in this podcast.
Oh, look, I'm open. I'd share anything, mate. I'm an open book. Yeah, no, I was a bit. I mean, I had some bad times and stuff. Caught a lot of fish though, mate. But yeah. See, now I like for the listener. I was out of control. I was just this guy who was just fishing a hell of a lot. Didn't really have any cares in the world. I did, but I acted like I didn't. And was just very reckless, and Pete was the more sensible one, the more grounded one, a bit more career focused. And now, I wouldn't say we've switched roles, but we have a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah, I don't know, mate. I would say this is completely on a tangent. I mean, I've got a lot of responsibilities and shit going on.
Yeah.
I've got family,
you got
mortgage,
kids and wife.
Do you know what I mean? 3 kids.
Mate, I've got mortgage and kids as well,
True.
I don't live with my kids, unfortunately, but I still got them. They're still knocking around. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I mean, we just get old, don't we? We get responsibilities. And that's life, isn't it? But yeah. No, I'm glad I moved. And let's be honest, there's some stunning carp up here in the Cotswolds. There really is.
I thought you were going to say women.
I mean it. No, wow, yeah, I've got one. I've got one. Yes, yeah, there is. And fishing up here is pretty good, mate. I need to find my stride with it, and I need to get back into that space where I'm like dead set on a water. When I get locked onto a water, I mean, it takes up a lot of my thinking capacity. Maybe that's part of it, mate. Maybe I don't want that because I know I have to balance out work and home life and shit, and that, like, for me, that's always been a bit of a mark of a successful angler, because there's people like Terry Hurt. No disrespect to him, of course, huge respect for him. But he does a lot of angling. He catches a shitload, but he spends a lot of time there. I mean, I caught way more fish when I was doing, 3-4 nights a week than I do doing one night. Of course, does that mean I was a better angler back then? I probably was, because I did it more often. But it's the time thing. It's how do you balance up your life and fish on minimal time and still catch them all. And I haven't figured that out yet, and I can't do it. And I think that's what I respect in someone.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think a lot of our listeners will sort of be listening and sort of like understand it. It's just what happens, isn't it? When you get older and you've got your business and you've got your family, and that balance is key, mate. And quite often the balance doesn't swing towards fishing, does it? You've got to sort everything out, and then sort of fishing is your little release and your little downtime, and it probably gets your attention for maybe sort of like 5% of your daily thinking, you know?
Yeah, exactly. How many, I mean, I always say this, we're not just angling when we're at the lake, are we? We're angling when we're thinking about it, when we're processing it, when we're planning our next steps. That's all angling. We don't have to be at the lake to do that. We can be doing our job and doing that depending on your job. How many hours a week would you say you spend angling, if that is what angling is, Pete?
Mate, good question. Quite a few. Do you know what? I go, like with everyone, I go sort of fits and starts, and I would say all through like lockdown, it's all I could think about was fishing because I couldn't go. And then we could go back to fishing, and I wasn't at work. I was on furlough, and it was all I could think about. And sort of like all my time was having to be at home with the children, doing the homeschooling thing. And like my wife was working a lot of the days, and I was at home with the kids, thinking about fishing and not being able to go. Yeah, I dedicate a lot of time to it. But now it's a bit of a weird one. Sort of like my focus has gone away from fishing and gone sort of more into sort of other interests recently. And I spend a lot less time thinking about fishing. But actually, when I'm on the bank, mate, and when I sort of get to go, I'm enjoying it a lot more. It's weird.
It's odd, isn't it? It's odd. What are your other hobbies that you got into?
I'm really into my, it's a bit sad, but I'm really into my cryptocurrency. And I've spent a lot of my time sort of doing a lot of researching and reading on different projects and things at the moment.
See, this is Posh Pete coming out. You know, the listeners, you have to envisage what Pete's doing now. He's sitting back into his, luxurious leather chair. He's got his smoking jacket on. He's puffing on his pipe. There's some, old collectible books in the background. And this is what he does. He plots his next monetary move. How he's going to make his millions.
The sad truth of it is, mate, where you've seen, because on the video, I'm sat behind a cupboard in my kitchen, which I started building at the start of lockdown, and I've not finished. And my chair keeps creaking because it's an old wooden chair, and you keep moaning because you can hear it on the mic.
Yeah, well. Cryptocurrency though, I wouldn't have a bloody clue about that stuff, mate. You get your teeth into things, don't you? You get rolling with them when you get into it. Same as me. But yeah, you've done all right, haven't you?
Recently, I've lucked out, mate. If the truth be told, in my time of investing, I got into cryptocurrency back in late 2017 when there was a huge boom, a bubble almost in the market, which went pop. And you sort of, crypto runs in cycles, mate. Like sort of almost 4 yearly cycles if you look at it through history. And we're just sort of entering, nearly 4 years since I invested. So I'm hoping for some growth in the sort of the market. And yeah, I just enjoy it, mate. It's like the Wild West of money. There's scams are central. There's pump and dump schemes. You can buy a token and you got to sell it before it all goes to shit. Your money's not safe. You can get hacked and things. It's ridiculous, really. But I enjoy it. And there's a few projects I'm heavily involved in. One of them's a UK-based project, and I've been really quite involved in the community and stuff. And I signed non-disclosure sort of agreements with the company at one point, and I was helping with. I was basically just a shill, mate, on Twitter, helping with stuff and promoting the company. Yeah, I just really enjoy it.
I've literally got no idea what you're talking about. All these words have just gone over my head.
But no, I did well recently. I told you, but recently I just like there's things in crypto. They just basically people can generate money out of thin air, and when they do it, it's dodgy, it's dangerous, it's a scam. And recently I told you about some tokens I managed to get, which is called like an airdrop in crypto terms, and I got them and I sold them there on the day for 1,200 quid, which is money in the bank. And before you know it, the bubbles popped and a lot of investors and people have lost their money. But if you're careful, you can get something in for nothing. Yeah, it's a funny old space. It's unregulated. It's not safe, but it's a gamble. High risk, high reward.
Do you know what? It's it's interesting. I mean, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think
very
I'm going
interesting.
to bore the shit out of people now, but the way the world's going, it's uncertainty, mate. And the financial system, as we know it, like the fiat system, is unsustainable. The banks are printing money like crazy. Debt is at an all-time high and only increasing. And if anybody wants to sort of like hedge their bets and put a bit of spare cash away, I don't think you can go wrong with looking at a certain number of cryptocurrencies, and that is the future of money. There is no doubt in it.
Fair enough, mate. I don't want to comment. I don't know anything about it. Anyway, back to Carp, mate. I think we've answered all the questions.
Mm-hmm.
They're done. You said you had a question for me. You wanted to ask me.
Ooh.
You wanted to grill me on
There was a few of them. I was going to talk to you about low stock pits and pace baits, purely because it sort of went with the flow of one of the questions earlier. And
we spoke about pace baits a little bit.
But one of the questions was they asked about baiting this time of year and low stock pits, and you spoke about pace baits, and I was saying how would you approach like a low stock pit with a pace bait was going to be one of the things.
Do you know what? I wouldn't like it unless on a low stock pit. I mean, I only by most people's standards, I only fish low stock pits, but like proper low stock pit. Like I would only bring out a pace bait if they're in front of me, and that means making that pace bait for every trip because they don't keep. You can freeze them, but I mean, I use some things that I wouldn't want frozen. Like milks, I don't think do great frozen, for example. So yeah, if I was to look pace baits, I think they're wonderful if there's fish there. You know, I wouldn't like use them on a low stock. Well, if I was baiting an area, and yeah, maybe I would do, but generally I would use pace baits for stalking, or just adding attraction to the swim. But then again, I think you could probably do that in better ways. Ground bait is great and it's overlooked. So yeah, but yeah, if I was on the fish, I mean, I'd put a bit of paste in front of them, and you can make it so soluble and very attractive to the carp. You have to make sure that it's palatable as well. You can make things very soluble but not very palatable, and they might be attractive to carp through the olfaction senses, but not so much through the taste, the gustatory sense. So you've got to be careful of that when it comes to the solubility. But yeah, I mean, if you can get in front of carp and using paste, it goes well. First place I really saw that was on the syndicate that we're in, the Cornish syndicate, Pete. That small little syndicate. It was it was very clear lake, and it was shallow, wasn't it? So we could see fish feeding, and I fed them some paste baits, and that's what sparked it, I think, from my warped memory, just delving back years. But yeah, I mean, yeah, low stock, big pit lake, yeah, great. Use paste baits. Just understand, you knock them up, a lot of them you're just going to be chucking in the edge because you haven't used them, because you haven't found the fish. You could put them out in the swim for extra attraction, yeah, but there's probably better ways of doing that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like my thoughts on it as well.
Yeah. You don't. You're. I mean, you're pretty knowledgeable on bait, mate. You're a bit of a dark horse. You don't let on that you know much, but you actually do. You got to watch Pete. You've not ventured down the route of paste baits. That's really surprises me.
Very, yeah, rarely. I'll tell you what, dude, just hold it there. I'm desperate. I need to run to the toilet, and then we'll continue from that moment.
All right, mate. That's fine.
Go, geese. Being a pain in the ass, mate. Mate, he does that. I think we get like a fox or something in the garden at night. He starts going berserker.
What? Is that Vanessa sleepwalking?
What a fox. Yeah, go on. Paste baits, mate.
Yeah, anyway. Paste baits. Yeah, I mean, you know a hell of a lot about bait. I'm surprised you've never gone down the paste bait route.
Yeah, I don't know why. Do you know what? If I say, for example, I'm fishing with Boily and I'm stalking and the fish are in front of me, I know that I can crumb up some baits. I can add some liquid attractor. I can make a little parcel that's super attractive. Yeah, I just think it kind of serves a similar purpose as a paste bait, I guess. It's never something I've gone massively down. Do you sort of like wrap a bait in paste, or are you using like a little cage or something on the hair?
I like I like these little spirals, these little wire spirals on the hair. So you basically you would tie your hair to this little spiral. It's not a cage. It's a spiral.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called. I have no idea.
I don't know what they're called. I've got shitloads of them. I've had for years. They're spirals. If you for the lads that have bought protein powders and shakers, they don't do them these days. But probably 5 odd years ago, you used to buy a blender bottle for your protein, and it came with that squishy metal ball thing.
It's like a metal cage, isn't it?
It's not a cage. It's like a squishy ball, like a spring ball type thing made of wire. They're like that, basically. You just tie your hair onto that, mold that around. But you can mold it around anything. You could mold it around a boilie. You could mold it around a Brazil nut. Whatever. Some people mold it around their lead. I don't like that because I think you could get carp picking up your lead and you think you got to run, but you're not. It's just the carp's picked up your lead. If you're using very heavy lead, obviously you could overcome that, but I just don't like wrapping paste in leads. I know it used to be popular back in the day. It's not something I like doing, but yeah, I like wrapping it around the hook bait. If you can make very soluble pastes and you can engulf the whole hook, confident in the fact that after 10 minutes that's all just, you know, a matter of dust and powder around your hook bait, which is very attractive. So yeah, it depends on your there's so many possibilities with pastes. I mean, we try and make the boilie the best possible, but we're always fighting against and always having to deal with the fact that it has to roll and it has to bind up together and it has to boil. None of that shit matters when you're making paste. You know, you can make it really sticky. You can make it really soluble. You can just do so much more. It's like having that freedom in a way. You know, you've made loads of boilie mixes, Pete. Mm-hmm. It has to behave a certain way.
You have to add
exactly that. Beautiful way to put it. You unleash the shackles because you don't have to bother with all that. It's the same as using enzymes. It always comes down to 2 points. Either like, oh, I could just use that thing in the finished product. You know, I don't need to split it down. I could buy it split down. Well, okay, I've spoken about why that might not be the best thing before. I know some people would disagree with that. And you don't need to boil. You do not need to boil it if you're using paste. You do not need to boil it if you're just adding it to particle. I know we were talking to Dean and I was saying about, well, actually enzymes, maybe there's some chemical reaction going on there which releases things which might not know about. Dean didn't agree, but I mean, I think going back to that conversation, there's a bit of grey area because, and I'm not. I mean, I'm not meaning to. I got a massive respect for what Dean knows. I mean, he knows more about bait in many areas than I do. I'm sure he does. But I think what I was trying to say was a bit missed. Earlier on in the podcast, he said that there's things that are maybe attractive to carp that we don't know about. And then when I said maybe the process of that splitting down, maybe there's something going on that we don't know about, he kind of dismissed that. We can bring it up again, and I wouldn't say anything now that I wouldn't say straight to him. I think something was a bit lost there. But yeah, so I mean, it's the same thing, you know. You're using paste. You don't have the problem of heating. You don't have the problem of having it to gel together and roll. Yeah, it's just very versatile. I'm getting on a bit of a passionate rant about my paste now, but I rate it. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, mate. I bet not many people, if any, actually take the advice and start making paste and going into paste. But they're missing a trick. I'll tell you that much. They're definitely missing a trick, mate.
And presumably, for the guys listening, you're using like a liquid food with your paste bait.
Yeah, you could just use water. If you want a quicker breakdown, generally you'd use water. I would favour using spring water or lake water. I've got a little stream back of me. I use that water. You could use water. Or, yeah, of course, you could use a liquid food. I've spoken about salmigo. I've spoken about mixing that with squid brandfish sauce. I think we've spoken about liquids quite a lot, haven't we? So, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, but, I mean, I haven't gone I have, actually, but I haven't settled upon mad complex mixes for my pastes. They tend to be a bit more basic, to be honest with you. I'd go a bit more in depth with the attractor profile of when I was making a boilie, purely because that boilie you're relying upon it to release food signals over a longer period of time. Whereas with a paste bait, you know, it's not releasing food signals over that longer amount of time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. So what have we got in the pipeline, Sam?
In the pipeline, we have got Joss Faulkner coming up. I believe he'll be the next episode that we release, all being well. And that is going to be regarding all things otters, otter predation, what we can do about it. Joss is someone that I came across years ago. He now does stuff for the Otter Trust in the form of he's a fishery advisor, so obviously he's working in our corner to make sure that things are done correctly. So Joss is a great guy. He's a wealth of information. We'll be talking to him about otters and otter predation and probably some carpy stuff and fishing as well. That episode is one not to be missed because otter predation is something that affects all of us, and if it hasn't already, it most likely will do at some point. You know, if you've got a fence, fair enough. But the thing is, this is our sport, this is our hobby, this is our thing, and otters are a very real threat to that. That's not to say blame the otter. It just is what it is. So yeah, that's the next upcoming podcast, Pete. Aside from that, I don't know, mate. There's a few other people that have said they're going to appear. A few names. Some people are a lot of people are kind of unreliable, aren't they, with this kind of thing? I'd like to do a podcast just me and you, just chatting carp, Pete. I know we've done all questions on this one, so it's a bit different, but it'd be good just for us to shoot the shit. Maybe we could do an episode where we talk about old stories.
Yes, we've had a few requests, haven't we?
Damn it! I need to do my ghost story.
Well, dude, it is October 31st. Is Halloween. We'll do a ghost episode special. Which we picked this up.
We can't do an episode, mate. We can't do a whole show on ghosts.
I don't know. My ghost experiences are pretty limited.
Yo, mine too, except for this fucking thing. I mean, look, this honestly, mate. You know me. Every word of that is
Hmm.
true. Like that was a fucking horrendous
Yeah. Well, I
experience
mean,
for
I had
me.
missed
Like,
calls at 3
really?
a.m. Thankfully, my phone was on silent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do a little Halloween special. That's the problem, though. We can't do a whole episode on
No.
ghosts because we've only got like one story.
Mm. But yeah, we'll go with that. But yeah, cool. Right,
All right,
let's
mate.
wrap it up.
Yeah, I've just realised I've had the mic away from my face for ages because I'm a few beers
Normally
in
you
now,
forget
a
to
bit
plug it
beard up.
in, so we're all good.
Well, happened once with Fennel. That was
Yeah.
it. All right. Anyway, thanks for listening. Yeah, catch you
Peace
soon.
out. Cheers, guys.